have our 2-minute offense ready because we hadn't stopped them all day. And, I was hoping to get a stop right there, and we should have if we make plays. But you anticipate them scoring or at least being prepared if they score, that you have an answer. We can't think the game's over. Offensively, we were always thinking about, okay, what could happen? So we were just talking. We knew we had 3 timeouts and really had plenty of time. I mean, we worked 2-minute drill every Sunday night in practice and every Thursday in practice, and really felt confident with 3 timeouts and Spencer Rattler at your quarterback at the quarterback position. Thought we were going to go win the football game, to be honest with you. And
all right, welcome back to the GamecockScoop.com podcast, the official podcast of GamecockScoop.com on Rivals. I'm Caleb, joined by Pauline and Alan. And yeah, I mean, Beamer there sounds pretty exhausted, frustrated. He was a little emotional after that game. We'll talk about some more of his comments following the 41-30 for homecoming for South Carolina, and in a game that they gave up a 10-point lead in the final 5 minutes of the fourth quarter. There's a ton of different directions, I guess, to go here, but I don't think that you can really talk about this game without talking about the defense, which is why I started with that quote. Before we get fully into that game, let's share some positive. Let's start a little bit of positive. So usually we start the show talking about recruiting. Yesterday, South Carolina landed their 16th commitment of the 2024 class by fully pulling off the flip of 4-star athlete Jalewis Solomon. He was committed to Auburn as of the beginning of last week, decommitted very quickly, scheduled a visit to South Carolina this weekend, and then committed to Beamer on Sunday. Beamer tweeted out a welcome home Sunday morning. Jalewis Solomon announced that commitment yesterday afternoon. So there you go. There's your bright point of the weekend. And that might be the bright point of the show. It's going to probably get a little bit more negative from there. All right. You were both there on Saturday. Pauline got a national TV appearance there as she was taking some pictures on the sideline when Mario Anderson made that hurdle, which she got a really cool angle on our Instagram at Rivals Gamecock if you want to check out that replay, one of the high points on Saturday. And then Alan, of course, in the press box and was able to ask some questions to Beamer in the media room after the game. Let's hear your initial reactions, I guess, from what went down on Saturday. I'll start with you, Pauline. You're a Gamecock alum. You were there, sort of celebrating homecoming while also covering for us. How did that one feel?
I honestly was pretty shocked at our offense. I was like, typically every week we're talking about how not great they are. And honestly, like you mentioned earlier, our defense was really lacking in this time. Our offensive line wasn't perfect, to say the least, but I honestly was more impressed with their 180 over the bye week. So that was one of my things that I noted. And then, wow, giving up a game like that in less than, Beamer said it on the field. I was 40 seconds left on the clock. We had about, I think it was either 2 or 3 timeouts left. We can stretch that and actually use that time wisely. And we didn't. I don't know. It definitely also didn't help that the fans were coming closer and closer with the intention of rushing the field. Cocky waved goodbye to the Gators. I was taking videos.
There was a mock Gator chomp, I believe, once South Carolina went up.
Oh, 10. I forgot about that. Oh, you know what? Yeah. I even said sitting next to one of the student reporters, it feels a little bit early for that.
There was, I think it was 2 minutes left, at least.
No, it was after the Simon touchdown. It was before the extra point, which got botched. So maybe that was the.
Yeah, that was the turning point.
Instant karma. Yeah, we'll have to talk about that.
Totally forgot about that.
Yeah.
Okay, so a lot there. I do think if we're talking positives and positives to take forward, it seems like South Carolina maybe found their best alignment on the O-line with a little tweak there. So we saw Gargiulo, who had been playing left guard, but had spent some time at center at Yale, move over to center. We saw Vershawn Lee, who had been playing center, move out to right tackle. And then you had your two freshmen still, left tackle, Chuba Balade, right guard, Trovon Ball, and Ja'Kai Moore, Trey Jones playing left guard. And that alignment did work really well, especially in the run game. We saw more consistency, I guess, in the run game than we've seen all season up to this point, except for maybe against Furman. So, yeah, offense looked good. Specifically, some of the weaknesses on offense that we've talked about all season looked like they were cleared up against a pretty reasonably good defensive front in Florida. On the other side of the ball, though, defensively, obviously, things did not go super well. You give up 41 points to a middle-of-the-pack offense. You give up over 400 yards passing to a mediocre Graham Mertz. Alan, I know you wrote a good bit about the secondary, which we considered a strength of this defense going into the season. So, yeah, what did you see on Saturday?
I think it kind of has to begin and end there. And that's definitely the first thing I thought when I saw the way the game ended, what I've been thinking about the 2 days since. If you would ask any of us, you can go back and listen to our shows in August and July. Where do you feel good? What makes you feel the best about this team? Okay, Nick and DQ back at safety, 2 experienced corners. David Spalding's healthy. You're bringing in a Jalen Kilgore as a freshman. It's not there. I think the talent's there. You saw it happen last year. You saw them play well. I don't know if it's maybe more on the corner, if maybe losing a Cam Smith and a Darius Rush is mattering more now than you thought it was going to. I don't know if that's a scheme thing, a coverage thing. We saw a lot of man ball out there. I think you had a note about the one-on-ones, and I think that's kind of where it has to start too, is you didn't win enough one-on-ones again, but you didn't win them with the guys you thought maybe you felt the best about out in space. I think it just has to start there. Is if you had to draw up a game to win July, you'd be up 10 with 5 minutes to go with your secondary the way it looked, and you didn't get it done.
Yeah, and I do think that the point you made about Cam Smith and Darius Rush is something maybe we didn't state enough heading into this season, because we felt like Marcellus Dial was going to step up. I think we also trust Torian Gray's talent evaluation and development, at least with everything that he's shown throughout his career. But yeah, right now you do not have anyone playing to the caliber of what Cam Smith and Darius Rush played last year. And I think that was key in this game, because what you tried to do schematically was you tried to stop Florida's run game and force Graham Mertz to throw the ball and beat you in one-on-one matchups. And South Carolina did that schematically, but they lost the one-on-one matchups. And I think, if you have Rush or Smith out there playing one-on-one in man coverage on the outside, that probably some of that works out a little bit differently. Especially, some of those balls put up by Mertz were very duckish, and it was simply Ricky Pearsall or someone else just out battling the defender.
But I guess this kind of leads to something else too. Is okay, at what point do you stop manning Ricky Pearsall? How many times have we heard Shane Beamer talk about opponents Dublin would get? At what point do you double Pearsall? At what point do you maybe go zone? If it's 4th and 11, do you really need to play man? You know what I mean?
It's tough, because I think they were also having some success, especially in the second half, especially in the third quarter, dialing up some pressure on Mertz, which was causing him to make some bad decisions, was causing him to miss even some open receivers. So if you aren't feeling super strong, I guess, about your secondary, you're better off putting some pressure in his face. It was a little bit of a catch-22 where I felt like the aggression from Clayton White and his scheme has served a under talented defense well in the past, and it just simply never came to fruition on Saturday. They never got that turnover in a key moment. They never were able to get off the field in a key 4th down. It was really just these moments. If you look at the stats, it's actually really surprising. I wrote about this in my rapid reaction. They held Florida just 4 of 15 on 3rd down, which, if anyone was watching the game, that probably feels like a surprising stat.
Yeah, it does.
But Florida was 3 for 3 on fourth down, all in the quarter. And a lot of those earlier third downs were kind of in key moments, third and longs, where it felt like you had an opportunity to get off the field and you simply couldn't.
I want to go back to really quickly your point about Cam Smith and Darius Rush, because I've been thinking about that since, and because I really didn't think twice about it, but Cam Smith has always been a very and Darius Rush, even though I feel like they didn't get as much publicity. I mean, Cam Smith did, but we don't have anybody. We don't have anybody like them at the moment. I can't really name one person that is as fast as Cam at the moment.
Well, and it may be a talent thing, but I also think it's the attitude a little bit. From a defensive secondary standpoint, you have to have that guy that's just kind of a jerk. And I felt like
crazy that.
Yeah, and for better or worse, and usually better, Cam Smith was not afraid to get a pass interference sometime. He was a guy that was going to be in your face every single play, and I have not seen that level of aggression from hardly anyone else. I see it every now and then from Marcellus Style, but just across the 5 guys in the secondary, it doesn't seem like that attitude has necessarily translated. Now, some of that I do think has to do with the youth and inexperience. We're talking about a bunch of freshmen and sophomores. I think that's something that can develop over time. But there's just not, I guess, a confidence or swagger in that secondary. And on the opposite side, I think you have seen that offensively from several players. I'm thinking of a moment early in the game where Spencer Rattler could have gone out of bounds and lowered his shoulder.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the coaches weren't stoked about that,
No.
but it did show a little bit more of a killer mentality on the offensive side. And I think we've seen that at several times throughout the year. But defensively, I just don't know who your emotional leader is at the moment.
That's gonna
be the guy. Yeah.
It should be, but I mean, I think he's very. He was utilized a lot.
70-something snaps.
He played a pretty good game. Yeah, I mean,
but I think he's very he works well with a very small group of people in the sense
Stone getting hurt. That's another thing too. I'm not interested in playing the excuse game. He gave up 41 points to Graham Mertz. Stone Blayton getting hurt didn't help, but
yeah, that was a tough one. I saw it on the field, and getting knocked out of breath like that is definitely hard. And a lot of us on the sidelines were like, he just got pancaked by a 300-pounder.
I guess we should mention that Mario got hurt too. Get more tomorrow from Beamer, but Mario, Stone, and Vershawn Lee all had tests yesterday per Beamer. They'll update Tuesday.
And those are all 3 guys that you're really going to need down the stretch. So we'll see how that plays out whenever we hear from Beamer tomorrow. From what I could tell, Mario got hurt, but then came back in and finished the game. We'll see if that was mostly just adrenaline or what.
He was on the field that last drive, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He kept playing after going to the tent.
Animal.
So before we move on completely to the offense or move away from this DB discussion, I have the PFF grades for the DBs. Who do you think rated out highest of the 8 DBs that played on Saturday?
You're counting guys who maybe played 2 or 3 snaps.
Well, it doesn't matter.
I thought Kilgore played pretty well.
That's it. So Kilgore. 70 snaps, he rated out at a 69.7. And then you have Marcellus Dial, 86 snaps, rated out at a 65. The rest of the guys are in the 40s and 50s.
I do want to say, though, it's something I noticed watching the game back yesterday. And look, I get it. Marcellus Dial took a bad angle. He missed a tackle. If he makes a tackle on the 4th and 11, you probably win the game. I'm talking about the one with 6 minutes to go down on South Carolina's sideline. Jalen Kilgore was not on the field on that play. Wasn't hurt. He played 70 snaps. 4th and 11, obvious passing down. Question mark, Clayton White?
He was being a textbook football player and doing exactly what he was supposed to
do. No, I know. Sell took a bad line to the ball.
Yeah,
it was bad. That's going to happen. I'm more wondering if there's someone behind him or if you're in a better position to make a tackle if your safety leading the team in tackles on the field on 4th and 11, which he wasn't.
I feel like we don't utilize those types of players as often as we should.
I mean, I think that brings us to another point, which is how thin the margin of this game was.
Yeah.
So even though some of those stats I read off earlier about the total yardage, obviously the overall score, all those things look bad for the defense. You really did play well enough through most of the second half to allow the offense to get back in it, of course, build out that 10-point lead. But there are these crucial moments in that second half where South Carolina just didn't make game-winning plays, and those came back to bite you. So I wrote in the rapid reaction, call it devil in the details, right? So one particular moment you can think of is you, early in the game, jump off sides on a PAT by Florida, allow them to go for 2, they convert it. And then later, following that touchdown by Josh Scheiman, they put you up 10. You have a bad snap and miss the extra point, which really starts to make the math work out in a fun way, especially when the final margin is 2. Of course, that probably it's not as easy as saying directly.
Yeah, they took a safety
final
with 3
mark,
seconds
right?
left,
But also they wouldn't have been able to take that safety with confidence, and also in the drive that Rattler needed to score a touchdown,
you only need a field goal.
Exactly, which the interception that Rattler threw at that point, there's 36 seconds left on the clock, and you are on your own 35-yard line or so.
Yeah, you gotten 1 first down to Joyner the play before.
Exactly, but if you only need a field goal, you're not necessarily having to like just push it and make desperation throws and stuff. So I do think that math definitely didn't work to your advantage in a game so tight. And then the other thing is just the 3 4th downs that you give up, including a 4th and 10 and a 4th and 11 on the final 2 drives that allowed Florida to score 14 unanswered points. I mean, you're 1 play away, you're an inch away. Especially, I think the one that probably hurts the most was the one to the backup tight end or whatever for Florida. I can't think of his name.
4th and 11, Boardingham. That's the one. Sell takes a bad line, he misses a tackle. Right, Kilgore's not on the field. Yeah.
I mean, he threw that well short of the sticks. That's a
behind the line of scrimmage.
3 or 4, if that. So I don't know. That's one of those plays that everyone involved, including the decision that you just mentioned about Clayton White not having Kilgore out there or whatever. Everyone involved is going to be kept up late nights, just hyper analyzing every single aspect of that for a long, long time, I think. And that actually is going to be the interesting point as they have to go on the road to Missouri, on the road to Texas A&M, is like, how long does a game like this linger in your consciousness? Because you got to find a way to wipe this clean and move on.
Pauline, do you want to take that?
I think I actually, me and my gut feelings in the mental part of the game, but like I would be even more determined than ever coming into this Mizzou game. Like after this, heart-wrenching, and freaking Shane Beamer said it too. Like it just was heartbreaking. Like it was something that shouldn't. I mean, you can't say it shouldn't have happened, but the effort was unmatched from anything I have seen before of them playing, and they're going to come back with more of a fire in their belly for
Here's where I would turn the page. I kind of think it's easy to get frustrated as an offense right now. Although the offense did some things that I really, really took issue with. We can talk about those in a minute. As a defense, as a secondary, especially, I mean, it's coming out of the tube. It's coming out of the tube, or it's not at this point. Like you got to have some kind of. I'm not going to use the word pride, but like I thought I used the word rock bottom in what I wrote because I don't think it's going to get much worse than 910 passing yards in 2 home games. If it's going to get better, you got a pretty good opportunity next week. Mizzou's got a good passing game. Luther Burton's an All-American wide receiver. Like if you are better than you're showing, if you say you're better than you're showing, next week's as good a chance as any to at least try to shut down a pretty good passing game in a tough environment and get yourself back in the win column.
I think the other thing that we haven't mentioned defensively is the missed tackles. I don't have the number, but I know it's bad. I was trying to find a statistic this morning. I haven't seen anywhere actually count them up yet, but that was not good, tackling in space, and you don't want that as you head into someone like Luther Burden. I mean, Ricky Pearsall is a nice possession receiver that's been reliable to get open and catch the ball or whatever. He wasn't making a ton happen after the catch. If you miss that initial tackle against Luther Burden next week, he's gone.
Yeah, that's 6.
So, yeah, so it's gonna be another thing. All right, let's talk about the offense a little bit, and then I do want to get into some of these narrative. Like, where are we at in this point of the season? Where are we at in this point of the Shane Beamer era? Because this was a must-win game. We pretty much all agreed before this one, and now the stretch is not good. But we'll talk about that in just a second. Offensively, Spencer Rattler continues to put up big-time numbers. He finished the game 23 of 30 for over 300 yards passing, 4 touchdowns, 77% completion percentage. I mean, statistically, you can't really ask for much more. He's still continuing to be impressive and play out of his mind. I will say, if I'm going to give one sort of criticism of Rattler, is we have seen a couple of times, I think, throughout his 2 years here, when the game is close and there is a pressure moment on his back, it hasn't always worked out super well. I mean, I do think we saw maybe an example against Clemson last year where he was able to kind of keep it together long enough to pull off that. Yeah. But for the most part, we've seen last drive interceptions. Now, again, they're not ideal situations. You're in a pressure packed moment. The odds are against you statistically and all of that at that point. So I don't want to like make too much of that. But I do think we've failed to see 5 or 6 times now him be able to kind of put things on his back in that pressure packed moment. Again, you scored 39 points. You scored enough points that you should have won. I think you have to put the majority of the blame on this one on the defense. But if I want to give one criticism of Rattler thus far.
So it's actually not where I was going to go with. Did you have something, Pauline?
I was going to actually say the exact same thing that Caleb said, is that like the whole under pressure situation we have seen with Rattler over the past 2 years is very true. And it's very evident when it goes down. And there were moments where I was on the other side of the end zone and Xavier Legette was down, continuing to scramble in circles to stay open, and then ended up, never receiving the ball because Spencer was too distracted with, I guess, everything else going on in the field at the moment. But
pressure in his face too. Like, again, I don't want to put too much on him.
Oh, absolutely not. I'm just saying the last 2 minutes of the game were very much of a reversion back to what we have been seeing in the past versus the progress he has made.
I'll be honest, I don't think you even need to take it there. There were 2 possessions in that game that I think really, really bother. If we're doing the blame thing, I'd put like 80% defense.
Oh yeah.
10% special teams and 10% offense or 5% offense, 5 coaching. Like, we don't have to do that. But I said it at halftime to someone, you get the ball, 2:31 to go in the first half in a tie game, exactly the way you draw it up when you win the coin toss and defer. You get a chance to stack scores. You get a first down. There wasn't even a 3 and out. You get 2 runs from Anderson, a 4 and a 6. Clock is under 2 minutes. That ball can't go back. That just can't happen. Even if you don't score there, you can't go 3 and out in less than, Florida used timeouts, but it was 3 and out in, I think, 20 seconds after that first down. You missed a block on first down. Rattler throws it away. Oh, go ahead.
I said you gave up a field goal to Florida.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like those 3 points there. You missed a block on first down, a short pass on second down. Babalade missed a block on third down. Rattler gets sacked. That's situational football. That just can't happen. And then the other one,
4-minute drill.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think I need to really go into what happened there. I think we said all summer our big question was, if you get the ball back up 5 minutes in a tight SEC game, can you run out that clock? No. You get the first down on the penalty, which was a big break. Was it a roughing the passer penalty, right, on Florida?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you get the one first down.
Even that was like you got bailed out. I don't know I don't know if that was the call or if that was Rattler just improvising, but he threw a deep pass down the field when you're trying to run the clock.
Yep. You got
it. It was a weird call to me. I mean, luckily you got bailed out in that situation, but still didn't work out.
But yeah, you miss a block on first down. Anderson loses 2 yards. Second down, short ball. Florida rushes everybody on third down. And actually, Rattler makes a good play to get that ball off to Knox and use a little more clock, keep it in bounds. But you you lost up front on 2 drives, one at the end of each half that led to 10 Florida points, and that's a football game right there.
Yeah, and I don't know. We saw like a little bit of a stubbornness to run. I think they got a little bit predictable on first down there for a bit, although then they played into that predictability later on a 1st and goal where they had a play action pass and scored a touchdown on it that I thought was really nicely done. So I don't know. I give Loggins play calling a B+, maybe even A-. I mean, you scored 39 points against a pretty good defense.
I wouldn't put it in log. I think you just got to win up front. I just pointed to, I think, 4 plays in those 2 drives where you just missed a block and Florida got home.
It's the key moments, and that's where I'm wondering if it's the youth of this team a little bit. They haven't learned how to win in these key moments, because you think about really all 4 of the losses thus far, there were moments where if you seize the momentum, you had opportunities to be in the game, to potentially win the game, especially in this one, obviously, when you have control with 5 minutes left, up 10. But even you think back to Georgia, you had your opportunities. You think back to UNC, you had your opportunities. And I think, it's maybe somewhat to blame on how young the team is. And you like to think that if they can stay together and continue to build or whatever, that's something that they'll learn over time. But it's frustrating to watch. How about that?
Yeah, and you got to win one of these eventually. I'm not just talking about this season. You got to figure out the only way to learn how to win is to win. You got to get a close game. I know Mississippi State was a 7-point game, but you were up 10, and then they kicked the field goal with 2 minutes left, and you just fell on an onside kick. A really tight game late. I'm talking either you have the ball down a score or tied with a minute to go, or you're up a score with a minute to go, get a stop. You need to win one of those. And other than Clemson last year, it's the only one I can really think of that you've had the last couple of years. I'm just kind of going through off the top of my A&M, I guess. You had to stop a Hail Mary attempt, but even that, you were up 2 scores late, and you let A&M get back in it and recover an onside kick for a chance to do that. You got to win one of those just somehow.
And I mean, one of my things is, like we mentioned last time I was on here, but you got to accept the team for what it is at this point. Like, the players are who they are. It's more of, at this point, we are throwing everything in the kitchen sink and playing creatively as we can, trying new strategies. This was the first time that I could be wrong and just haven't paid attention before, but we were being smart with our timeouts and actually like playing and strategizing with the play clock way better than I think I have personally seen in the past. But with that being said, Florida played the clock out better with 8 seconds on than we had with two timeouts left. So, I mean, 1 timeout left, regardless.
I mean, like Alan mentioned, it was masterfully set up as far as you deferring at the beginning of the game and being able to stack possessions and stuff. But yeah, you didn't take advantage of it. You got the ball back with an opportunity to run it out, and you didn't take advantage of it. So I don't think that there was anything necessarily wrong with clock management.
No, I just think it's like different times you have to focus. Like, we have to try and focus on different aspects of the game to like get us ahead at this point.
Right.
Like, we need to take advantage of other things and focus on. Not saying that it's a bad thing, but that could be a great tool for us, considering we don't really have the power that we need on the field at the moment.
All right, we've hit the turn. Or do you have anything else on that?
Oh, no.
I mean, my only other thing is you're kind of saying something that I feel like we saw Beamer say mid-game and after the game, which is that I don't put a bunch of this on scheme or coaching or play calls or anything like that, offensively or defensively. But you had a very frustrated Beamer mid-game when he was asked on the field, like, what's going on defense. He said, freaking do your job. And then after the game, and I saw he clarified on Sunday as well, he's like, the calls are there, they're just not being executed at the moment. And he was particularly talking about pressures and stuff. I know you wrote a tweet about that yesterday, Alan. It seems like there is a level of frustration and a disconnect between what is the right thing to do and what is actually being executed at the moment.
Yeah, in some ways put that back to coaching too, because if you're not teaching the technique right, all right, well, that still happens on the practice field. That's still, you know what I mean? I think that's just a shared blame thing for everybody. I think now we're at the point where, okay, you're 2-4 at the turn, 2 tough road games coming up. And I know you have the note here in our note. Where do you go from here?
Yeah, and that is the essential question. And it, in many ways, it could become an existential question very quickly if the thing were to fall apart from this point out. But you think about what's left on the schedule. You need 4 wins to get bowl eligible, and I think anything less than bowl eligible is going to be considered a disappointment this season. So you probably can still put down Jacksonville State as a win. You probably can put Vanderbilt down as a win, although they played pretty well against Georgia this past Saturday. But let's just put those 2 down as a win. You still have to find 2 more out of road trips at Mizzou, at Texas A&M, and then tough home games against Kentucky and Clemson. Do I think that they can win 2 of those 4? I absolutely think that they have the potential still to win 2 of those 4. They haven't been blown out by anyone this year. It's felt like they've had a chance against every team they've played thus far this year. Would I bet that they're going to win 2 of those 4? It'd be really hard to say so at this point. Yeah, so I mean, I guess that's the real question. Like, what do you have to do to maybe split Texas A&M?
That's kind of your
Missouri.
math at this point. Yeah.
Otherwise, yeah, you're gonna have to win all of your home games from here on out, which doesn't seem very likely.
Yeah, that's your math at this point. I think you hit it right. Split the next 2, clean up Jack State, Vandy, and then you're 5-5 going into those last 2 home games and try to grab one more of those. If you're looking for hope, Kentucky struggled a lot. That's 2 straight losses after they started 5-0 against the soft schedule. I still don't think Clemson's infallible, but I think at this point, has this team earned your benefit of the doubt? No. And that's kind of where it starts for me. And I want to be careful how I word this because I'm not implying that you're going to bench Xavier Legette and give all his snaps to Kelton Henderson. Like, that's not what I'm saying. But at some point, I think this does have to kind of turn to freshmen, turn to the future, because this season's not going where you wanted it to. I mean, even at best, you're 8-4, which just matches last year. A realistic goal is 6-6, 7-5. That's still a step back from last year. I'm not saying your season's over. Again, I'm not saying bench every upperclassman for a freshman. That's not what I'm saying. But you have to start looking towards the future a little bit, I think, and just trying to figure out what might work for you next year. Because it's not a lost cause, but I think you're teetering. I think I said you're on the edge of the cliff right now, is the way I put it in the story.
Yeah, so I'm trying to think back to how things felt following that Florida game last year,
right?
Where you played your worst game of the season. The boo birds were starting to come out. The forums were starting to light up with, gloom and doom and all this. I believe those were the exact words that Beamer used after that, the gloom and doom. Is this the highest scrutiny point of the Beamer era thus far? Because personally, I feel like it is, but I also am wondering if I just don't remember the feeling, I guess, almost a year ago after that Florida game before, when they very quickly quieted things down the following 2 weeks. But yeah, what do you guys think? Is this like starting to feel like a tipping point? I mean, you said edge of the cliff, a tipping point where things could go one way or the other.
Maybe. I think, like Alan mentioned, you can't get lower than this, really. I mean, it would be nice to have another redemption tour against Missouri, but clearly our redemption tour this past weekend didn't go as planned. But you really and like I mentioned earlier, the fire in the belly, that's where I'm coming from in my perspective wise. But me and Alan, I think both are on the same page in regards to what else are you going to do besides just start over at this point? It's not the end of the world. You have to accept the team for who they are. Nothing's going to change personnel wise with 5 or 6 games left. Or
That's
it. Yeah, that's it.
And I don't think that you would put Beamer anywhere near a hot seat scenario at any point this season. I think even if you lost out, he's probably not in danger of being fired or anything. I mean, his seat would be quite hot going into next year if he lost out. But
well, I mean, if you lose to Vandy and Jack State, then yeah, I mean, I'm just talking about. I'm keeping this in planet Earth. I'm not. No, they're not firing a coach. They're not firing a coordinator going into a Week 8 game. It's like that's not going to happen. No one's saying that should happen. Like I said, I think for me, this starts to become. I think the point you made about learning how to win is incredibly accurate. You need to learn how to win, and more than anything else, you need the young guys on this team to learn how to win. And the only way to do that is to do it, to have them in positions to do that. That's kind of where I would set it up now. Is
just
I don't question effort. I do think there's coaching questions to be asked a little bit, just in terms of some of the technique, some of the decision making personnel wise. The Kilgore not being in that 4th down is still been thinking about that. But you're 2-4 right now. No, your program is not on fire, or because you lost to Florida at home. Yes, I think this season might be cooked. And it definitely would be if you lost the next 2 weeks, I think, and you're 2-6. But that's kind of about where I'd say you can panic about this season. I don't think I would panic about the program.
Yeah, I mean, some of that's still, and we've talked about this several times, some of that's still going to be what happens in the offseason in the portal and all those sorts of things. But yeah, I mean, if you're thinking about vibes, I guess, culture, all those sorts of things, I think you still feel good about where Beamer has you, and you feel like he is the man for the job for rebuilding belief and positive vibes and all that. We've seen it over the past 3 years. Obviously, he just picked up a 4-star recruit on Sunday after that loss. Like,
that's what I thought was the most surprising. I was like, clearly this kid is impressed with our effort on this.
Well, or he saw that secondary and saw an immediate spot for him to play.
I have a job.
But I think we can give Beamer and his staff at least a level of belief 3 years in that they're not going to lose the locker room, because we've seen some low points the past 2 seasons in which the locker room has been rebuilt. I think it'll be impressive if he can do it again, because this feels like a low point. But as far as the trajectory of the program, this is something that we talked a lot about over the last couple of weeks because of the bye week and just having extra time and stuff. You have 16 commitments in the 2024 class, 10 of which are 4-star or above. Your 2023 class was the highest rated of the Beamer era thus far. Like, there's help coming. There's help there that's young and still needs to learn how to win, as you just said. I don't know. It doesn't feel like a moment where there's this ongoing same issue that can't be corrected, maybe the same way that this moment in the Will Muschamp era felt, for example, because I think 3 years into that experiment, when things started to get a little wobbly, you were like, okay, he can't field an offense in the SEC. Right. And that was like a consistent issue for 3 years. I don't think we've seen the same consistent issue throughout the Shane Beamer era. It's just piecing it all together at the right time, and that just hasn't come to fruition so far this season.
And I think I agree with your point on the whole translation of offensive and defensive coordinators on the field. I mean, and Shane Beamer, but like the players are just not experienced enough, and unless they just bench Xavier and everybody else and just
nobody wants that either.
Solely imagine Jacksonville State and just a first line freshman, just only freshmen. Like, I mean, that's the only.
I mean, they might play in the second half, and not for nothing, Rattler and the Gators still fighting for their NFL futures.
No, again, like I was very clear, like that's not what you're going to do. You're not going to do that. All I would say, you just talk about keeping the locker room, things not letting you be twice. That start against Missouri is going to be very important because that's the kind of game where you can't have a hangover. You're on the road. You're against a team that's 6-1, by the way. Mizzou's playing very well right now. Just went to Lexington and won by 17. You can get in a hole in a hurry if you let last week linger against this team. And if that happens, then I think you are talking about things maybe going over the cliff, at least for this season.
And I think my question for you, Alan, being in that post-game press room, and I've read the comments and stuff, and I have, I guess, my opinion from a distance, but what were the vibes? Do you feel like that is something that is likely to happen, that they're going to hold on to it and be hungover on this road trip? Or do you think that there is good hope that they're going to be able to rebuild it? Because at least from my perspective, I see comments like Debo Williams saying like he thinks that they should have won every game thus far, and it's just like an attitude adjustment sort of thing, or whatever. But that's what I'm saying. He's still got the positivity. You're talking about him being a senior leader or junior senior leader on defense. So yeah, what do you feel about the attitude from what you were able to gather?
I'll answer that two ways. One, I don't necessarily think that's what the scenario I just laid out is going to happen, or if it does, it won't be because of effort or heads dropping or last week beating you twice or whatever, just because Missouri's got a pretty good passing game. So I would start with that. And then second, angry. There's been times there's been frustration, disappointment. That was the angriest post game I think I've been in since I've been here.
Your belly, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, Shane's upset. They should have won a game. Debo was upset. Trying to think who else we had in there. Spencer, Juju, and
Juju played well too. That's another
scored 2 touchdowns. Yeah. I can't even think who the fourth player was. There was one other defensive player in there, but Tyreek Johnson, who had a field goal block, which we hadn't even mentioned.
I was gonna say.
Yeah, I know that they haven't been listening to my calls to play Juju more, but it was kind of nice to see him get some touches in scenarios that made sense for him to get touches. Although, I can't remember exactly what the play was, but there was a moment that it was not an obvious like third and short, or it was an obvious like third and short or second and short. And you would expect Mario to have gotten a carry, and they handed it to Juju, and he got
outside
like 6
the numbers
yards for a first down. Yeah,
going towards the cockpit. I think I know what play you're talking about. Like,
yeah,
it might have been the first quarter.
I just remember noting that as like we were hypercritical of that moment 2 weeks ago, where he got a carry on 3rd and 1 and got stuffed, and then a similar scenario popped up, and he got a first down, and of course, no one's even going to think about it or.
Right. Well, that's what you said last week. That if you get the yard, no one cares about the personnel decision. The one in Tennessee.
Exactly. So, but yeah, I think everyone take a breath. Pauline and I are both Carolina fans, or we were Carolina fans before we were in the journalism world. Obviously, we try to stay a little bit more objective now that we're getting paid to cover them. Alan did not grow up with Carolina fans, but we were talking a little bit about how it was a gut punch, right? Like it definitely. I've thought about the game after the game more than maybe any game thus far in the Beamer era. And I think it's because it felt like one that you should have won, and it always stings a little extra when you lose in that fashion. That said, I think everyone needs to take a breath. Sky's not falling. I don't know that you bet on winning either of the next 2 weeks. But let's let it play out. I don't think that this is a moment to start talking about burning it all down, even though I know that there's some catharsis to that if you're a fan.
And if you do want to burn it all down, GamecockScoop.com insiders form.
Yeah. Oh, please give us your opinions about what should be burned down, what should be kept, all those fun things. But at the moment, I don't know. I feel like I tend to sort of wear it on my sleeve, and I would let you know if it was time. And I don't think we're anywhere close to that at the moment. Personally,
we're nowhere close to that. Yeah, I'll see y'all in Columbia next week. The other Columbia, the cold Columbia, although it's only supposed to be like the 50s this week.
Yeah. So. And some other storylines going into that game. South Carolina is 0-4 in the last 4 against Missouri. Shane Beamer's never beat Missouri. Obviously, it's a rivalry game, but we assume the last like constant iteration of it, at least for right now. Or they
are on the 24 schedule, but I don't know if that'll be an every year thing after 24.
Right. We don't really know. Obviously, the divisions are falling apart.
Also,
and it was a little bit of a
weird game. I know there's a trophy. But does anybody care about Mizzou more than Clemson or Georgia or Florida or Tennessee? Like,
we have a rivalry. I'm sorry, maybe in basketball, but
It was always strange bedfellows to some degree, I guess. But it's become a little bit of a tradition. There's
Mayor's
been some
Cup
really,
week. Get excited, people.
there's been some really fun games in this
Yeah.
series, and I mean, at least thus far in the Beamer era, this has been one of those moments where everyone counts them out. I know I'm not going to pick South Carolina to win this coming week, and they show up with a game out of nowhere. So we'll see if that happens. We'll have plenty more coverage on GamecockScoop.com in the coming days as we begin to preview Missouri. We'll have some more recruiting notes. There were some other big-time recruits on campus this past weekend. A couple of potential flip candidates. I know one I'm thinking of off the top of my head is Cameron Fountain, who is committed to the other USC, but seems very much like he's leaving some doors open. So we'll see if South Carolina can pull that off or not. But anyway, we will be back here on Thursday to preview the Battle of the Columbias, or whatever you want to call it. In the meantime, follow us at Rivals Gamecock on all social media. Subscribe to us on YouTube or your podcast app, and visit us at GamecockScoop.com. We'll see you.